Welcome to the Find Your Voice, Change Your Life podcast with psychologist Dr. Doreen Downing. Listen in as Doreen interviews people who felt they didn't have a voice or who suffered extreme speaking anxiety. You'll hear stories about how they struggled to speak up, what they did to find their authentic voice, and the confidence they now feel to speak up and make an impact. If you want to get started right away to find your voice, download Doreen's free 7-step guide to fearless speaking at doreen7steps.com. And now, here is Doreen.
Hi, this is Dr. Doreen Downing. I'm a psychologist and I host the Find Your Voice, Change Your Life podcast. I invite guests who have had some kind of experience in life where they felt challenged about having a voice. Sometimes it happens early in life and they have a story about that, or maybe it was just through school or coming out into the world and being a professional. It ranges quite widely here on the podcast for those of you who have been listening to the stories that people get to tell. But the one thing I could say that seems to be true for every single one that shows up on my podcast is that they're committed to being authentic. They really do want to tap into the truth of what they have experienced in their life. So then in that way, it becomes inspirational, motivational, right? So today I get to interview someone that I just met and I've been enjoying our conversation. I happen to be on her podcast and we'll talk more about that. Hello, Michelle.
Hello, good to see you again.
Yes, I'd like to read the bio so that people know right away who you are and how tremendous you already do with all the tremendous things you already do.
Thank you.
Yeah. Michelle Prince is a best-selling author, motivational speaker, publishing expert, leadership coach, podcast host of the Power of Authority Spotlight, and CEO, founder of Performance Publishing Group, a partner publishing company dedicated to making a difference one story at a time. She's helped thousands tell their stories and founded the Book Bound Workshop. Michelle has published many successful books of her own, including her best-selling Winning in Life Now and her latest, The Power of Authority. She is known as America's productivity coach, is a certified human behavior consultant, and dedicates herself to helping leaders impact the world using the strengths and talents already within them. She is also a dynamic speaker and has been endorsed by some of the most influential speakers in personal development. I have to take a big breath. That is so wonderful that you're willing to come in and unzip a little. And yes, this is all wonderful accomplishments, but it probably didn't just start that way where you landed in life and said, hello world, I'm successful.
No, nowhere near it.
Yeah, so that's what we do. We begin to open up corners of your life. And I usually, because I'm a psychologist, like to get a sense of, what it was you coming into the world and what the family situation was, maybe where you grew up, just some little tidbits about so that we get a scene, like kind of
Yeah.
a early what this young girl came into, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I was born in a suburb of Chicago, and my parents, middle class, low middle class. My I have an older brother, so I was the youngest of two, and just a good, strong, faith-based family. All of our extended family was in Illinois, so that was basically where it started. And then we moved out of Illinois when I was 5, and then we, followed. My dad had a couple different opportunities on the East Coast, and then eventually made our way down to Texas.
Wow, that's a journey through our country, except for the West Coast, where I am. So,
I know, been there many times, but never lived.
well, I hope one of these times I get to meet you in
Yes.
person. So we'll set that up. But so in terms of just locale, I get that. And just about the family itself, your family, when you look back and want to kind of spell out what we might visualize, what kind of
Sure.
family?
Well, my parents still married today, so always a loving home, strict but loving. And my mom was the oldest of eight children, and my dad was the youngest of eight children. So they, big, big, big families, all over, the Chicagoland area. So my first 5 years were just surrounded by tons and tons of family. And, just your typical, from my memories of early, my mom was a stay-at-home mom up until about, I think I was 6. And the story she tells is like I was ready to, move on when I went into kindergarten. She said that she like walked me into the school and I was like, no, I got it. Bye bye. And she says, I've never looked back. And that's probably true. Always been pretty independent. And, I'd say the thing that shaped our family the most was very strong, family roots. And then, I was raised Catholic, so we had big Catholic families, and that was just, you know, steak or what is the the term, steak and potatoes or meat and potatoes kind of family.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I get it. What we call uh, salt of the earth, that you're really grounded. That's wonderful just to begin to see you, the little girl coming into the world and being kind of already upright and on her feet.
Yeah, it's funny because I don't remember that, but I do remember just always being pretty independent and pretty much like I'm gonna figure this out.
Mhm. What sibling were you, like, of the family in the family?
I'm the youngest, so I have a brother who's 2.5 years older.
Oh, that's right. So
Yeah.
it wasn't your mother and father didn't create large family themselves, even though they came from.
I think that's why. I think they purposely were like, "We are not gonna have a huge family." A lot
Uh-huh.
of dynamics that go along with that, as you may know.
Well, before I move, I just want to pick up one word that you said and just see if there's some kind of illustration that might have to do with voice early on. I mean, I already get the goodbye, I've got this, and that feels like a strong sense of yourself early on. But you said strict. So
Mhm.
sometimes strict is, I don't know, I guess the strongest word would be oppressive, but it's also anything you might want to say, any stories that come up about strict and how that might have affected your voice.
Yeah, so my mom was raised in a very strict family, meaning like everybody, you just had to be just perfect in a sense. And so some of that kind of probably carried on with my parents that, as much as they were great parents, I think that the phrase we would hear a lot as children are to be seen and not heard, and and don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all kind of stuff. So it was always very, I knew to mind my P's and Q's, and they were, disciplinarians. So I don't think in a bad way, but just, we knew that if we talked back to our parents, we would, yeah, we would pay for it. So
Hmm.
that's what I mean by strict. And they also were very, even as I grew up, not allowed to do a lot of things, which looking back really protected me, but always had a curfew and always, they expected the best of me. And so, as I think all children, you live up to that. What is expected of you to some degree.
Hmm. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm getting the picture, and listeners are following you on your journey to become more of who you are and the kind of, um, I don't know, awareness of what was, and it's not so much black and white, right and wrong, but just awareness that, there's a way for you to be and present yourself and speak so that you can, I don't know, feel comfortable and confident. Now, there has to be somewhere along the line where you feel like, my voice isn't quite all of what I want it to be. What
Mhm.
story might you have about that?
I don't. remember as much on, the early years. My mom would say that I was pretty quiet. And I think some of that was because I had an older brother to speak for me. But I think I can remember more as I got older, middle elementary school. We did move when I was 6 and starting a new school, and so just kind of being careful not to say the wrong things, and but that's a great question. I can think of things more as I grew older,
Mhm.
of not really having a voice, or not really having a voice, but not necessarily my authentic voice. It was more, I was a people pleaser. I mean, pretty much all through middle school, high school, I wanted to be liked. And I don't know if you know anything about the DISC model of human behavior, which is what I'm certified in. I'm a high I, which means people person, wants to be liked, all of those things. And so that comes with, you don't always say what you think. And so I think I did that a lot when I was young.
What's I stand for?
Oh, influencing.
Uh,
Yeah. So basically just somebody they're people oriented, outgoing, and they can be inspiring, influencing, tend to be big in their gestures, which is I'm doing right now, which is kind of funny. But yeah, very much outgoing, just likes
uh,
people, likes to be a part of groups and things like that. And I always have my whole life, even when I was little.
oh, that's fabulous to hear. I like the other I that you used, inspiring, because I already have felt inspired by you. In
Oh,
fact, you do programs, and you've got one next week that I've signed up for. I think it was called The Power of Storytelling.
yes, the power of your story.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, I'm so glad.
Yeah, you and I are going to have much more conversations as we go forward, and I'm
Oh, yeah.
so glad I've met you. Well, I get that, the whole sense of actually what I'm feeling is both. There's this kind of I have to stay more on a narrow
Hmm.
kind of channel here in order to be accepted and be right, and to get approval, but I also have this personality which
Hmm.
is inspiring, and this kind of
Yeah.
figure, like you said, with a gesture that you did, just really opening your arms, and even as we're talking now, you're just kind of floating there. And it just feels like, yeah, you've got a lot of wonderful energy to give people, and I love the I in
Thank
you.
you.
So my whole idea here, and kind of fleshing out what is the challenge for somebody who's got both of those, like
Hmm.
the bigness, but also awareness of that there's like there's some limits
Oh, yeah.
on yourself. So just
Well,
any.
I would, yeah, and just out of honesty, my feeling like you can't be
uh,
exactly who you are in order to fit in. And, I also strict parents, but I also, when I was young, we were, like I mentioned, we were Catholic, and I went to a Catholic school, and it was very strict. And, you didn't, you had to mind your P's and Q's and stay in line, and no energy and all of that stuff. And so I think, probably if I'm not a self-diagnoser, but if I had to look back, I probably had ADHD and didn't even know it. Now everybody talks about it, but
Yes.
so I do remember getting in trouble a lot. I was always a good kid. I never did the things that any parent would want their kids to do. I never did. I never got into all of those things ever.
Mm.
But I definitely had some, way about me, and I would speak my mind and learn really quick not to do that.
Oh, this is really fabulous. I'm really glad that we're finding out all these facets of
Yeah,
you and what it takes to bring them all together. Let's say, so moving further into life, I know that there's some things that I have read about you, and it was you starting your own business, where I think there was maybe a story about how that was more challenging, you finding your voice.
definitely. In fact, so there's so many in life, there's all these ups and downs and ups and downs, and I after college, the long short of it is when I was just going into college, I met Zig Ziglar, and that made a huge impact on me, and I knew I wanted to work for him one day. So when I graduated, I did work for him and it was awesome and I loved it. And I was, very excited about what I was doing. However, I was young, 20 something, and I really wanted to grow and climb the corporate ladder and make more money and do all these things. So, you know, lifting my voice to be like, I want to do more, that was hard for me. But then getting into what I thought would make me happy and a career and making more money and all this stuff, and then finding out that I wasn't really that happy doing it. I kind of missed something that passion, and that's really what led me to start writing. And it was more just for myself. It wasn't like I was trying to build something at the time at all. It was just I am very spiritual, and so I journal, and that's how I hear from God. And that's how it started. But then I put it into a book, and that's kind of what started opening things up. But I'll be straight up. I was a nervous wreck because I became so good at fitting into everybody else's little world of what I should do, but I was desperately wanting to do, my own thing and wanting to, you know, share what I learned and share things that, about finding my passion and I found it later in life. I've discovered it early, but I didn't pursue it till later in life. And so that was a big finding my voice thing, because being a people pleaser and then saying like, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to write a book and I'm going to start a business. And I got a lot of eyebrow lifts like, really? You? But I had enough confidence then. I think what triggered a lot of my people pleasing, and I talk about this too when I do my own events, is, I had a low self-esteem when I was younger because I, didn't feel like I was good enough. And so it would rear its ugly head sometimes, but I'd always overcome it, like that we
Mhm.
talked about earlier, feel the fear, do it anyway. But then it would still be in there a little bit. And
Yeah.
so when I finally got the guts to say, like, you know what? No, I'm tired of not being me. I need to do this for me, for I'm be who I was created to be. And that's when I went full force into I'm doing this and I'm writing my book and I'm starting a business and I'm gonna just see where it goes. Yeah.
Oh, I love that breakthrough moment that you're talking about where the declaration is there. So just in that moment, I know it's not just, like on the clock, it's 1 second or even
Mhm.
1 minute, and that it's, actually all the previous kinds of expressions you've tried and it didn't work, or when you finally said, yes, this is it. Just say a little bit more about that sense of, yes, I'm going to be me.
Mm. Yeah, I can remember being in corporate America, and I was in software sales for, a large company, and there was just certain things you're just not allowed to talk about at work. And, like anywhere, right? Politics, faith, all of those things. But, I loved personal development. Working for Zig, and I was just always a little like I've always been optimistic. I've always been just kind of, I don't know what the word is, but you couldn't do that in a lot of corporate situations. And I do remember feeling stifled and not feeling like they understood me at all. But I was always really good at what I did. So I made my sales and I did my thing, but I was just never really authentically me. And then like we'd go through a training session where they'd bring in a company and I'm like, oh, I love this stuff. I love this stuff, goal setting and self-esteem building and all these things that I did at Ziggs. But it was just weird to people. And so I just didn't talk about it much. And then my faith, very, very, very important to me. And again, you wasn't allowed to talk about it. And I remember hearing a song, this was, gosh, I don't even remember the year, but the words were so perfect for how I felt for a good part of my life. And anyone who knew me in high school can relate. I always acted so happy and everything was so wonderful. But inside, I wasn't always happy and I wasn't always wonderful, but I hid it really, really well.
Yeah.
And there was this song by Natalie Grant called The Real Me. And in fact, I wrote about it in my first book because it had such an impact on me. And I'm not going to get the words right, but it's basically all about, I just want to be me. I just want to authentically be who I was created to be with no apology, with no, yeah, one of the lines is, I'm tired of wearing all the masks. I need to take off my clown mask and all of this stuff. And it was just such a and that was not a one day thing. It was just kind of, this was happening over a couple of years. I'm not as happy in work. I'm craving, to be more mom. I'm craving to be more me. And it was, I believe a divine appointment for me to figure it out. I didn't figure it out on my own, I'll tell you that.
Uh-huh.
And it just, yeah, that's how it all came together for me.
Oh, I really get the integration of all those parts that you've already talked about today. And what I sensed early on was both the spirit of you and then the kind of containment of it, and how that
Mm,
was seems like that was the struggle. And then
yeah.
finally being infused with the, I don't know, the this trust, the determination to break away and claim yourself, claim your voice.
Yes. I say it, claim your authority, which has nothing to do with being in charge or important, but more of like just claiming who you were created to be. And, like just, and or recognizing it. And that's
Uh-huh,
one of the things why, I never set out to help people with books, never. But it is just so natural for me to see something in someone else that maybe they don't see yet. And I think I had somebody do that for me. I know Zig did that for me and other people. So it's like, I want people to see that everything that they're wanting to be or have in their life, it's already within them. They have to believe it first. And I didn't believe it in myself for years.
uh,
And then that's where that shift started happening. And it's like, no, this is who I am, and that's okay. And it's great. It's why am I afraid to be that?
oh,
So,
yeah. Well, that question, why am I afraid to be that, is the one reason why I do the podcast, is because a lot of people are afraid to be and do exactly what you're saying. And it's more than doing. And that's why it's also about a being.
mm,
And what is, I mean, because people are trying to do the right
yeah.
thing, or they're trying to do what it's going to take. But I think if we look inside and say it's more about the being of who you are, and learning to, I don't know, have that be your ground, your
Yeah.
habitat is way deep inside. So I liked what you just said also. It's just like, hey folks, it's inside. You never, it's always there. Let's just go in and discover
Yeah.
more of it. And that's what I call the essence, and why I call it essential speaking. You're speaking from the essence of who you are. Oh,
Oh,
and Michelle, that's what you're doing. You're doing that
love
today.
that.
And I'm just I just feel so joyful being in your presence. And I hope that the people listening are feeling the resonance of your heart, and
Mm.
also your gut.
I mean, there are days, so that was, gosh, 12, 13 years ago, that a lot, or even before, when it was starting to kind of, and I sometimes look back and I'm like, man, I did have a lot of guts back then, didn't I? Like, what was going on with me? But,
Uh-huh.
but I think that's just, I love what you said about being, because if we're not being who we were created to be, that's when our crisis happens. And that's when there's this, it's internal conflict, right? And it's somebody's going to have to win, either the real you or the you that you've been putting out there. And it's just, it's an internal crisis. So,
Uh-huh. Well, one of the other things, when you talked about writing, I,
mhm.
I got that there, and how you listened. And that to me feels like one of the how-tos is learning to listen to yourself, whether you're doing journaling or meditating
Yes.
or just being out in nature, is learning to listen within, but also listen to the signs that are in your life and what you're drawn to. You being somebody who goes to the corporate trainings and go, ooh,
Yeah. No,
and other people are just like, yeah, okay. But
right.
you got stimulated and turned
Yes.
on by it. Yeah.
Yes. And I do love writing because, and not writing just to write, but that is where I kind of get downloads, or just like, that self-reflection, and it's important. And maybe earlier in my life, I was just so busy that I didn't stop and do that. And so for me, I was in my 30s by the time I really, so my advice to anybody listening is, don't wait that long. Just start being self-reflective a lot earlier.
Yeah. Well, you said maybe I didn't stop, and that, we had talked about my 7 secrets, and the first one is about has you stop, to just
And
stop
listen.
and be still, and to quiet your mind and quiet your body in such a way that you can't listen to, what you're talking about, listen to what the inner voice is saying. Well, we're coming to an end, and there are a couple things I want to ask before I have to say goodbye to you.
Okay.
You talk about stories, and I would like to just, give you a moment here to see what story just happens to pop right now for you, just kind of in the moment. Who knows?
Oh, wow. A story about myself or just in general?
Well, let's see. I always like it about yourself.
Okay. Okay. Gosh. Well, I told you a lot about, my insecurities growing up and all. I have, it's funny that you were asking about younger. I have a memory that is confirmed through photos that my parents have showed me, but I do remember being about 3 or 4 years old, and I was in ballet, and it was our first recital. And I told you when I was young, I was really quiet, and probably because I just knew like to, stay
Yeah,
in line, right? Between church and family, it was pretty much,
got it.
yeah. But I remember my first recital being nervous about it beforehand, but then getting, I think probably I had a soda or something. I got really, really, really hyped up and excited. And my parents even said there was a side of me that came out that day. And I was like, "Wah, la," and all this stuff. And there is a picture of me like doing that.
Uh-huh.
And all the pictures leading up to that point were just very me quiet and just, you know, but I think I love that picture because it is like, okay, that's a great visual of what you do in this podcast. And I hadn't thought about it before you even asked, but that, what, that authentic voice was there, and I was just ready to have fun and be out there and dance. And funny enough, I was a dancer my whole life until I became an adult. So there's something in that. So that expression of just, so, yeah, I don't know why that story came out, but that is definitely one that came to my
Uh-huh.
mind.
Oh, I'm so happy, and I trusted you to just, tap in and see what came, and it didn't matter, but, the word that comes to me in what I take away from you is effervescent.
Oh, thank you.
Mhm.
You
Yes.
can make me cry.
Well, that's part of what I do is, look into somebody's being and really tap into what I am touched by. The beauty, or what I saw in you was this, just the beautiful spirit of effervescence. So
Thank you. Wow, you made my day. I love
good.
that.
Well, so let's talk about how people can find you, because I'm going to show up next week for your workshop.
Yay! Oh, I'm so glad. Well,
But
couple
you'll be
ways.
doing them in the fall because this isn't going to come out for a while. But at least tell
Yes.
people. Okay.
Yes. Well, I do a couple different workshops. I do a live event called Bookbound, and it's bookboundworkshop.com. And it's just helping people to figure out, well, what is your story and how can you leverage it to make an impact in the world? But michelleprince.com, or on social, performancepublishinggroup.com. There's a lot of different places, but just find me. I'd love to connect with any of your listeners. And I love authentic stories. So I would love to hear other people's stories. So find me and let's connect.
Social media is out there. Michelle Prince. So that's, we'll
Yes.
look you for sure. Thank you. Well, I asked you about that story, but just we're going to end now on any last word.
Just that life's too short to just, hide behind who you think other people want you to be, be who you were created to be. It's good enough. And, don't be afraid to share your voice, because maybe it's your voice that's going to change somebody's life forever.
Oh, thank you, Michelle.
Thank you for having me.
Yes.
Thank you for being with us today for this episode of Find Your Voice, Change Your Life. Each person during interviews shares what has helped them find their voice. You can learn from these guests and find your voice so you can be confident to speak up and speak out. And remember to download Doreen's free 7-step guide to fearless speaking at doreen7steps.com. We hope you enjoyed the show and will return next time. Until then, goodbye for now.